Welcome to the Law School Insider, where we have conversations with students, lawyers, and employers.
Succeeding in law school is something that you must prepare for, not only before you begin, but throughout your law school journey, and that's what this podcast is all about. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Lewis, and I will draw from my over 20 years of experience in the college admission field, as well as bring forth the experiences of others as we delve deeper into the issues. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Law School Insider. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Lewis, and I'm so excited to be able to have you back again this week. This week, I am just thrilled to be able to bring you Sharon Rowen, who is an attorney of many years, but also a principal of Rowen Klonoski down in Atlanta, Georgia. But she also is a filmmaker of 20 years and recently brought out a brand new film that talks about the law in a whole different way. It's called Balancing the Scales, and it is a look at women in the law and some of the challenges that female lawyers have faced over the years. And this is such an important topic. And as a father of two girls, as well as seeing so many women that are going into the law, this is such a important topic that we need to talk about. We haven't talked about it yet on the show, so I was so excited to be able to talk with Sharon today and to be able to have her on the show. So Sharon, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, Sharon, I am so excited to be able to chat with you about the journey that you went on to be able to create this film, because this is a film that is a very important topic, and it definitely shows the journey that women have gone through over the years. And I guess I want to go back in time a little bit and go back to the beginning, the impetus for you to start studying this. And what was it about this specific topic that intrigued you? And what made you have a passion for taking the time and effort to be able to do all of the interviewing and all of the exploration in this area?
Well, I've been a lawyer since 1979, and in Georgia, which is the state that I practice in, it's a fairly socially conservative state, so it may not even in the 80s have been, perhaps as progressive as some other states. So for the first 10 years of my practice, I experienced my own discrimination against me, and some of it was fairly overt. I mean, when I graduated law school, firms were not hiring women just because they were women. That sounds crazy today. That sounds crazy to law students today, since 50% of them are women. And there's no problem being hired as an associate today if you're a woman. The problem that I found in interviewing many women across 5 generations is that it's not the getting hired at the beginning that's the problem. Women come out of law school thinking, well, we were equal, we were in law school in equal numbers, we're getting hired as associates in equal numbers. But a few years down the road, the problems that are still extant become extremely obvious. The first problem is implicit bias that women are going to leave, bias that women don't have the ability to bring in business, bias that it gets shown as not being mentored like perhaps male colleagues are. But also the entire issue of work-life balance and who is expected to step back when the idea of having a family or having to take care of a relative or any type of caregiving situation comes up in life, which it does. Women in their 20s don't perhaps think about it much, but once you hit 30, 35, those issues many times become paramount. And so what really fascinated me as I was interviewing across these generations is that everybody felt like it was a personal choice that they had to make. All of these women were telling me, this is a personal choice that I have to make about whether to step back or not. And I feel like I have to step back in order to perform these caregiving obligations. And what fascinated me is that the women themselves felt like they were the people in the relationship that needed to step back. In other words, women have implicit bias as well as men do. It's not just discrimination coming from the outside, but because our culture has certain very entrenched ideas about gender roles, the women themselves feel like they are the right people to step back for caregiving obligations. So that's one of the things over the years that I found extremely fascinating. When I started interviewing, that was back in about 1994, I was mainly interested in talking to older women lawyers who were real pioneers and getting their stories. Many of them had outsized personalities. They were really, amazing, remarkable women who really, stood up to the overt discrimination that they faced. And I really had a good time just talking to all those women and hearing their stories. But as the years went on, I found my attention being more and more drawn to the idea that that women of different generations had very different ideas about gender equality and what their role is in society and how they needed to fulfill it. And that led me eventually to the idea of exploring why is it that these cultural norms that we have in our society today, why is it so hard to break free from those cultural ideas that may no longer be relevant? So that's basically a history of my 20 years of interviewing. It was kind of peeling back layers of why our society comes to expect this of what they expect from men and what they expect from women and what women expect from themselves.
Now, in all of the interviews that you did, and as you said, peeling back those layers and talking to the different generations, now that you have also talked to individuals that are younger in their career, how has the cultural norms or the acceptance of, let's say, gender equality changed in the legal field in looking at the five generations?
Well, there was let me say first of all that history kind of moves in fits and starts, and progress is not always straightforward. And so in terms of gender equality, even in terms of the current situation, you're kind of seeing a rolling back of gender equality in some areas in our country. But just over the course of my lifetime, there was a big push for not only gender equality, but all kinds of social justice. In the 60s and 70s, it was kind of on the forefront of the societal burner in America. And in the 80s and 90s, that started rolling back a little. People just weren't as interested. There were other things that came to the cultural forefront. So when I started interviewing in 1994, one of the things that I found most interesting is that everybody seemed to say, well, gender equality, we still have a long way to go, but it's absolutely set on a course. The only thing that's holding us back from having women in top positions now is the fact that, some of the men in those positions haven't retired, and as soon as they retire, women will be in the top positions. Well, they'll move into those top positions in equal numbers with men. And then when I started re-interviewing people in 2009, it turned out that was not true. In 1994, everybody believed that. I believed that. Everybody I talked to believed that. But in 2009, I looked around, and it just simply wasn't true. Women were not moving in equal numbers into top positions in law firms, in politics, in government. It just wasn't happening. And so that is what became of paramount interest to me. Why wasn't that happening? And it is simply true. It's as true today, or maybe even more so today than it was in 2009, that there are real barriers in terms of people's attitudes toward gender equality and people's attitudes toward the proper role for women and what they should or shouldn't be doing throughout their life. So, women are not in top positions now. The amount of, or the percentage of equity partners that are women in the United States in large firms, and this was the ABA does this study every year. So the last study, it was 17%. it should be 50% because there's 50% women in law school, there's 50% women as associates, but there's this winnowing out process that happens for any number of reasons, much of which can be attributed to implicit bias, where women are not reaching those top positions. 17% is not good. And in some of the senior partners, some of the women I interviewed in large firms, their own firms had less than 10% women partners. So, the picture is not all rosy, even though the young women that I interviewed today have this feeling when they get out of law school, I can do it, I can get there. All roads are equal and open to me. But there are barriers that women face that men do not.
I appreciate you sharing that, and it's good to know that the barriers do still exist. And I guess the next logical question that I need to ask you then is, as you've gone through this, as you've seen that these barriers do still exist, and especially for the young professionals, the people that are at the beginning of their career or even the middle of their career that still want to push forward, they want to make that change in society, and they want to make it to the top. What are some of the things that either they need to be doing in their career, or two, as a group, as a collective, that needs to happen to make this shift in society today?
Well, I think that the first thing that I tell everybody is that it's not just a woman's problem. It's not just what the women can do to overcome. This is a society-wide problem because everybody has these cultural norms. So, say, for example, there are two people that graduate from law school. They both get great jobs. One is male and one is female. The male can go to work for a firm, and in 2 years, his wife will be having a child, and there is no issue with him continuing his career. But when it's the woman who's faced with that situation, there's always this crazy, impossible choice to be made that they feel like it's their personal choice, that they have to step back. And once they do step back, and I'm not saying that stepping back is a bad thing, because there are times in life when caregiving is the most joyous thing that you could possibly do. Caring for a child, caring for a parent, caring for a spouse, whatever. I'm not saying that it's a bad choice. The problem comes in when law firms or society says, hey, once you make that choice to step back, you're never going to be able to get back on that partnership track. That is where firms, large firms, are at today. You step off and get off on the mommy track, part-time track, whatever track it is, you're never going to get back on. You're never going to end up reaching the top of the field. So I think that in terms of what can be done, we really need to get everybody, the men as well as the women, involved in asking why it is that everybody, men and women alike, feel that the caregiving role is relegated to women. That's not necessarily true. Men also love to take care of their children, but many men do. But don't have the opportunity, because when they're in a firm working 18 hours a day or whatever, and they say, oh, no, I have to step back, I have to take 3 months paternity leave, or I have to go pick up my child from daycare, or it's my turn today to take care of a sick child, other people in the firm may very well look at them and go, no, that's your wife's role. If you have to do that, you're not committed to the firm. Those are the attitudes that need to change. Men's attitudes need to change. Women's attitudes need to change. Everybody's attitudes need to change about the value of caregiving, and how in a society that now requires, for the most part, dual income families where everybody's working, we have to shift our thinking so that caregiving becomes as important and as relevant as career at certain times in our life. That is the same for men as for women. Men should also think there are times in my life where I can step back from my career, let my wife or, my partner move forward in hers based on a more rational conversation than just it's a woman's role to step back to take care of the children and step back from her career in order to do that.
So for someone that is in law school right now, are there certain questions that they should be exploring, certain things that they should be doing to be able to broaden their understanding, broaden their acceptance of the change that needs to happen, etc.?
I think that people in law school don't, on the whole, spend enough time thinking about, before they accept a job, thinking about the work-life balance part of it. And if they could think about that earlier and have the right conversations to explore what that career is going to look like, I think that it will make things easier for both people in a relationship and for the woman and the employer relationship. Right now, I think that my opinion is that if you're a woman that wants to have a family, not go, forego children and forego a relationship and, move to the top of the profession, partner, equity partner in the firm or whatever, that's certainly still possible. But you have to devote so much time to it. The women I talk to are talking about 80 to 100 hours a week, year after year after year after year. And that is on top of firms expecting you to go out and have your own book of business. So a job offer from a large firm, for example, it might be a great idea, might sound good for a few years because you get to pay back your student loans, the salary's great, the training's great, all those things are true. But if young women could think a little more into the future than the first few years and see what their life at a large firm would consist of and whether that would fit in with their own ideas of their balance, what they feel like they need, but the balance between work and family, I think that they would be less surprised and less unhappy when it finally happened. And it would also encourage earlier conversations with spouses and partners and families about, if I'm going to move, if we're going to have children, am I going to be able to continue with my career? Who is going to be the one that's going to step back to be the main caregiver for the children? I don't think that those conversations happen early enough.
Those are great points, and I agree. I don't know that all of those conversations are happening yet. Now, for people that you spoke to or others that you have spoken to since the movie has completed, are you finding that some of the knowledge that you are sharing in this, some of the things that people are experiencing currently, and some of the things that young lawyers or law students right now are experiencing may lend to a change in the conversations, the questions, the play that happens when you're talking with an employer?
Oh, absolutely. There's always the issue of how much you can be honest and advocate for yourself in a job interview, obviously. But I think that young people need to really do their homework about the firm that they're thinking about, for example, going to work with. Large firms are its own kind of special universe. The pay is much higher, but the hours required are much higher, and the atmosphere is much different. And so if you can just explore that a little bit to see, is that what you really want, or do I want to go to a smaller firm, or do I want to work for a nonprofit, even though the money is not as good? I might, not be able to get a new car every couple of years, but will I have the personal satisfaction of what I think of as making a difference, as opposed to being in some kind of corporate litigation or, mergers and acquisitions department where I'm not feeling that I'm doing anything for the social good. So you really have to know yourself what you want. I don't know if it works often that people go to work for several years for a large firm and they say to themselves, I'm just going to save up for a few years and then I'm going to leave. Sometimes that will happen, but oftentimes you end up kind of stuck in place. I think as a rule, from what I've heard from all kinds of consultants and employers in the legal field, women have a harder time moving once they get established someplace than men in terms of lateral hires and things like that, moving to a smaller firm. Women are just a little more cautious, maybe a little more conservative, and of course I'm being very having to talk in big generalities here, but I think those are the statistics. They're just a little more cautious, a little more conservative about making big moves in their career. So I think that women have to be really smart when they first start out about thinking carefully about what kind of life they want, what kind of work would satisfy them, and what would make them happy.
Truly appreciate you sharing that. And now, are there any other resources or things that men or women should be reading, should be looking at to be able to explore this further for themselves that would help them to be able to kind of expand their own knowledge or expand their own understanding of this?
Yes, I found many blogs helpful in terms of the research that I did for this film. There's a couple of them that I read regularly. One is Above the Law, and another, which I'm sure you may be familiar with. Another one is Miss JD. They have lots of different blogs and articles and all kinds of things just devoted to gender issues in law firms. The ABA has the Committee on Women in the Profession, which has I think it has a Facebook page as well as part of the ABA webpage, but the Facebook page, lots of articles come through there that I find relevant. Some of the research that's being done and the books that are being written by people like Sheryl Sandberg and Anne-Marie Slaughter are very, very helpful in terms of putting things into categories that maybe we as a society have not caught up with yet in terms of casual conversation. The parts about caregiving being as important as career in some stages of your life, and how we as a society need to elevate the issue of caregiving to the point where both sexes feel invested in it. That all came from a book by Anne-Marie Slaughter, which I really like some of her. She talks about women's issues, career issues in general. She's not a lawyer, but it certainly helps put into words some of the things the people that I interviewed voiced as problems. She proposes various solutions which kind of make sense. Not solutions that we can go out maybe and do tomorrow, but solutions in terms of how we all need to change our thinking in terms of these issues.
Well, I truly appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate you being on the show this week. Now, where is the best place that people can come to find out more about this film? And we'll put links in the notes today.
Unfortunately, I cannot yet make it available on DVD. I am screening it around the country for various law schools, bar associations, and firms who have been emailing me and calling me ever since the film has been finished. There's been a great, great interest in the subject matter. So I have been screening it all over the country, but just at private screenings so far. Hopefully in the next few months, I will have some news on broadcast options that maybe can be seen on TV or in some other place, after which I might be able to make DVDs available. So the best way to keep up with that would be to go to the website, the film website, www.balancingthescalesmovie.com, and either drop me a note so that I can put you on the mailing list, or just keep checking back on that or the Facebook page. And as soon as we have any news on that, we'll absolutely put it out there.
Well, we will put that in the notes today. And again, thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you for all of your advocacy for women in the law and for everything that you shared today.
Well, thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Well, that was another great guest this week on the Law School Insider. If you have an interest in being a guest on the show, drop me an email at lawschoolinsider@cooley.edu. And thank you all for listening today. And remember, you have the ability and right to take control of your law school's success. I hope you'll continue listening, creating a plan for success that will prepare you to achieve the dreams that you have set for yourself. Talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. You're on your way to being a law school insider. Please subscribe to stay connected and come back again next time as we speak to more students, lawyers, and employers.